Welcome back to another episode of Life After Corporate, my friends. And if you are new to our show, welcome home. This is the place to be when you are starting your next chapter as a business owner in the coaching, consulting, or service provider space.
Mm.
And this conversation today is one I'm very much looking forward to. And it's all about reinventing yourself in your third act and the power of community as we move forward. And my guest today is Diana Place. Welcome to Life After Corporate, Diana Place.
Oh, thank you, Deb. It's a pleasure to be here with you, if only virtually, but
Yeah, I know, because the wind chill is -1 or something like that outside. So
cheer to you. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So we're coming to you hot today on a cold day to talk about this transition from corporate leadership to entrepreneurship. And Diana, I know you were an executive leader at AOL. Share with us a little bit about, back in the day, what encouraged you or what was the impetus for you to say, hey, I want to just go out on my own. I've had enough with this corporate gig.
I think we all come to these decisions to make a major transition at different times for different reasons. And it seems that across my life, there's a convergence of reasons that just hit me square between the eyes and say, now. But for me, I was a part of America Online before I really even understood what the internet was. I didn't have an internet account. I joined in the late 90s. I stayed there for about 10 years. It was a wild ride. I loved 70% of it. So at the time, I became a late in life mother at 41. I was witnessing a sea change in a negative way of the culture within the company. Money was flying in. There were just so many disconnects with my values around what I was doing in the company. All of a sudden, new baby, like, no, I need to rejigger the way I'm living my life. So I left with a beautiful experience in my bag of tricks, but at the same time with great excitement over a clean slate. But it wasn't easy. For the challenges we all face in these transitions, it wasn't easy, but it was it was an imperative, I guess, for me at that time.
And what did you do? Did you take a break to just focus on motherhood for a while, or did you dive into something else?
I did what a lot of people do, I believe, when you leave something that's, I had a 35 plus year career of really, I call myself a productivity junkie. I worked dawn till dusk, till dawn. I was a bit overprogrammed. So I stepped back just a wee bit, but I found that I could be a mother and focus on my child and at the same time dip my toes in some entrepreneurial waters, which I did. And I had a series of different ventures. We spoke at some time about our shared experience as a photographer. Oh,
Yes.
that's a dream I had always had since a child. Hung up a shingle, did it for a few years, decided it wasn't for me. I did a number of different entrepreneurial things, but my focus was always on maintaining balance. Until my daughter needed me less, time wise, that's what I did. And so that's really where I've come. I decided that it was not an option, both because of my age and because of my desire to not go back to a corporate thing. And that was a non-starter. I said, never again. I really needed to be in charge of my own decisions, my own welfare, and to be allowed to be a little bit more adventurous and creative with the way I lived and what I created. So that's
Yeah.
what
I mean, once you get that taste of it, it's so hard to go back. And the sad truth is, most of the time, they don't want you back. And so it's, I was just reading a post by another colleague on who was commenting on a Wall Street Journal article. She didn't post it, but people think that your last act is in your 50s. And, once you're in your 50s, you're dried up. And there's many of us that are past our 50s, and we're still vibrantly creating and vibrantly leading others. And there's something to be said for wisdom and calm in the face of chaos, and all of the things that we bring to the table at this age and stage. So I, for one, am so grateful to know you, and grateful for our relationship. And I'm excited to share you with the rest of the world on the podcast today. So let's talk about what was your next move? So photography wasn't it. You dove into something else. What was that something else? And because then that led you to 333.
Well, I spent 4 years working alongside a co-founder on an organization and a vision that was beautiful. It was her vision, though, by the way. That's an important little clue about why that had to shift. But it was her vision. I thought it was beautiful. I could bring a lot to the party. We had a lot of great ideas, and it was called the Global Design Post. And at the center of it, and this is where there's a thread to what I'm doing now with the 333 collective community, was to create a platform for designers around the world to not only be inspired by our design gurus who we had recruited from all over the world, but also to learn how to manage their businesses, because a lot of creative souls lack in those areas. So we did that. Flash forward, like, as I like to say, we set the table. We spent a year and a half working on building our platform and recruiting our gurus. The table was set, ready for the big party that we were going to host as we launched it. And I had this really weird feeling in my head, and it ended up being a cancer in my head that was a very, very rare cancer. So that happened at the very same time. I called it my lightning strike moment, because at the same time I was preparing for an empty nest, preparing to turn 60, I had to shut down my business because I couldn't do it and go through the treatments. And there are a couple of other changes in there that don't even need to be mentioned, but those lightning strikes, I love this. I did some research on lightning. When it hits a beach, it turns the sand into crystals. And I really reflect on what could have been. It was a life-altering disruption, but it was a life-affirming disruption. And it affirmed to me that I had to focus on really, really spending my life in a more meaningful way than I had been. So I literally sat in my chair one day and I said, hey, I'm on my third act.
I love your spirit.
And I'm like, oh my God, I really felt like I'd let myself out of what could have been a prison of something that was successful and fun, but not my thing. So that was a big aha. And I got so excited. I Googled third act, and there's a talk that Jane Fonda did a number of years ago about 3 acts. I mean, that's a play, but the third act for me is basically the culmination of your wisdom, your experiences that all come together in some sort of an aha. Like, this is who I really am. This is what I really want to do. This is how I want to work, how I want to live, who I want to be with. So I find that our third acts are just that. So after that venture had to shut down, I reinvented, and Third Act Quest was born in 2019.
That
So
is so juicy, right? It is just really so juicy. It's the culmination of everything you do. It's so funny because when clients come to me, and maybe it's because I'm in my third act, but I always say your business is the culmination of all of your experience, personally, professionally. Everything that makes you you up until this point in time is what you bring to your business. It's not an idea. It's a soul quest,
yes.
right?
Isn't it true? And you have a lot of experience working with entrepreneurs, but isn't it true? I catch myself all the time saying, "Ooh, I'm really jazzed by this idea. My heart is beating faster. I'm in flow and I've just spent 4 hours writing my idea." I said, this is two things. It's what I need personally, but it's also what I translate that is a sort of a craving for the women that I've become in my friendships and in my colleagues. It's like it's part of the zeitgeist and it aligns with what I need. So, hey, it's right for me. That's
Yeah.
my little test.
And also I think that when you have that passion and that curiosity and you land on an idea, and I would venture to guess that as a child, you were probably also a leader who said, "Hey guys, let's go do this." Because it's just natural that and maybe I'm projecting because as I looked back on my own childhood, it was like, oh my God, I was putting on a play in fourth grade and getting my friends to act in it. And, I've been a community galvanizer no matter where I went. It was like, hey guys, as a photographer, I created a group called New York Photo Group, and we got together once a month in person to critique each other's work. And I owned the URL nyphoto.com because it was 1995 and
Wow.
no one had a website and no one knew about owning URLs. But
Yeah.
it's just that, and I think when you're a creative and you find a good idea and you're living in alignment, it's just only natural to want to share that with other people. Is that true for you as well?
Close. I think one of the defining things that as I've reflected, and I spent a lot of time reflecting on what I call my aha moments, those lightning flashes of clarity that there's a decision I need to make and it needs to revolve in what in many cases have been revolutionary change in my life.
Hmm.
Those moments came mostly borne out by realizing that whatever I was doing at the time didn't really match with my values or my heart. You know, example, 10 years in an ad agency in Boston, unbelievable fun, adventure, advancement, all the trappings that the 80s brought for advertising. However, in one day on a walk to work, I won't go into the details of what happened, but within a moment of witnessing two different things experiencing, I went in and left my job.
Hmm.
I left a job of 10 years because I said, what I am doing is not meaningful to my heart. I want to make an impact in the world. So I ditched that job with literally 6 months of living expenses and started a cause marketing business. And what led up to that decision, which goes back to your original question, is all the time that I was working my job with my clients at the ad agency, I was doing stuff on the side
Mm.
that organized. I decided that I needed to, this is so funny when you think about it. I decided that I needed to support children in uh, I had witnessed a lot of the organizations and initiatives going on with inner city children. So I started a thing called Children's Vision. I married that with my love of photography. I recruited 25 volunteer mentor photographers to rally with me, and we worked through a program that was going on in Harvard at the time. I won't go into too much detail, but we brought these children and taught them to use photographs to photograph their lives, to express themselves through photography. And God, I wish digital was around then. I couldn't afford to keep it going. So
Right.
I did a number of these things that really brought my heart into it. And I finally said, I can't have a job and do these little jobs on the side. So back to you. Yes, I've always loved ideas. I've always actually coupled that with really wanting to make a difference in what I did in some way.
Yeah, and rallying others behind it, which you did with the other photographers. So, passion is contagious, and especially passion that comes from absolute clarity of, misalignment of values. And usually those shifting moments can come in between thoughts, right? And so that's why, a lot of people say they've gotten their calling on a meditation cushion or while they were somewhere else on retreat, or if you've cultivated a level of awareness where you can live in the interstitial moments between one thought and another,
Yes.
then, there's lots of great stuff to have there. But without getting too esoteric on, where insight comes from,
But
um,
you know what, can I interrupt you because I
yeah,
love what you said without going too esoteric. I like to say with women, I don't want to get too woo-woo on you, but there are messages that
yeah.
come to you in so many mysterious ways. You have to tune in your radar to listen to them and
Mhm.
then make meaning out of them, not to ignore them. Those synchronicity moments. I mean, I'm sure we if we all wrote our list of these special glimpses into potential or to shifts, it's a really encouraging practice to adopt and nurture.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And when you mentioned, becoming an empty nester, it was at that moment when my son went off to college and I was a single mom. I was alone. And I wrote in my journal, I said, okay, what's next? And the answer was the passion project. I was like, what is the passion project? I have no idea what that is. And lo and behold, that was my next iteration of my company, which turned out to be the Launch Lab. So it's in those moments, and they're sometimes unexpected, but all you have to do is kind of ask the question of what's next or why am I feeling this way? And so much of corporate is our behavior is reinforced by doing the same thing today that we did yesterday and the day before because we are conditioned and reinforced for behaving and thinking and operating in a certain way. So it really requires that pause and that reflection to come up with something that's different. So the women who are listening to this podcast and the men are those people who feel that either they've already realized that there's something different for them, something with larger meaning or bigger purpose, or they have an inkling that there's something bigger on the horizon, but they haven't been able to identify that yet.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I remember when we first started to understand the implications of what I see as the most collective disruption we'll ever experience in this lifetime with the pandemic. It really struck me that it was an opportunity for cracking a lot more people open. Yeah, it certainly was devastating, for many, many, many people. But for me, I remember just saying, sometimes in your life, you need to have an instigation of introspection. I mean, a lot of shuns here, but it, many people, like you say, in the corporate life, I gave my blood and my ideas and my energy to my company because I cared about it. And it propelled the company and it propelled me. However, I would only spend glimpses of times at a retreat or on a introspection to dig inside of me.
Mm.
So those little blips would come up and I'd tamp them down and go back to my, business presentation. So I think that's, I'd love to hear more about what you're experiencing working with the different people you worked with over time from the Launch Lab and now what
Mhm.
you're doing to nurture this sense of getting in touch with who you are and getting in touch with how you want to give, serve, work in this world. I think it's a moment that tends to happen for people in their 50s. And
Yeah, well, it's happening earlier and earlier. So what I am finding is women in their 40s, even women in their 30s
oh wow.
are noticing where they're out of alignment, and maybe
Yeah.
because they've had moms like us, or people who have influenced them like us. So maybe there is a legacy that we're leaving here, Diana.
I think
Um,
right. I think you're spot on.
yeah.
Spot on. You don't see we were rejecting the gold watch theory,
Hmm.
that you have to work your whole lifetime at the same company. But I think when I look back on yours, I'm curious about you. I was like a 8 to 10 year goer in chunks
Hmm.
of career.
Yeah.
Younger people now are,
Two,
been
three.
there for two, doesn't resonate with my values. My boss is not supporting me. I'm miserable. Done. I
Yeah.
love, I love that shift.
Yeah, and entrepreneurship is an option. So I do want to bring us back to community, because this is a series that we're doing with community builders and community owners. And so when you had your wake up call, your cancer diagnosis was a huge thing. You had to exit that other business. Um, and Third Act Quest was born. So tell us about Third Act Quest, how it came about, and what role does the 333 collective play in the overall, business value proposition and strategy and all of that.
Right. So I decided that as I looked around, there were so many amazing women who either were forced out of a role or trying to revisit work as after a break for being a parent, and they couldn't figure it out. So entrepreneurship was happening, but people were reinventing the ways they lived. I like to say also that not out of always necessity, but I was seeing a lot more people in their 70s or 80s choosing to stay working, doing, because it made them feel alive. Okay. So I knew that was me, but I wanted to put a spotlight on women over 50. And everywhere I looked, the Wall Street Journal and all the different media outlets were they're starting to feature older women, but they were always the famous ones, of course. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Jane Goodall, the latest and greatest movie star who's over 50 and fabulous. And I said, it's time for us to share the stories of third act women. I call them the extraordinary, ordinary women who are doing remarkable things. And I think it would be more relatable. So what ended up happening is interesting. COVID threw me a curveball. I ditched my idea for retreats and created an online talking circle for a while, started to get used to Zoom. And then I launched what became a three annual third act storytelling events on Zoom. And in those years, people were at home for the most part. I ended up getting great audiences. And over the course of 3 years, I had over 50 or 60 different storytellers. So in that, I created this beautiful network of people, mostly women. And I got to know them and said, oh my gosh, there is this craving for a deeper kind of connection. Not only do we need each other because we're going through interesting transitions in our work, or our bodies are aging, our parents are aging, our kids are aging. And at the same time, we're excited about life. But we need each other's support. So I said, okay, there's a craving for a kind of connection that's true and deep. And it is not one that is met potentially by your current circles of friends. if you've left a job, those colleagues sort of fade away. Maybe a couple stay around. Your children's friends' parents are no longer a real match for you. So I saw this void in a lot of women's lives and a craving. So the 333 Collective was born out of that witnessing, I guess. So I hope I'm painting the picture of the breadcrumbs, I like to say.
Yeah,
I
you
follow.
followed the breadcrumbs, yeah.
And so it's an exciting time for 333. It's almost our third birthday. And
Yay.
yeah, so I love the power. And I know you've launched your community, which is, just really exciting, I believe. So here we stand.
And just to make it clear, launching a community is not easy. It's Diana almost choked on her water there. Yeah, it is not easy. So what are some of the lessons learned that, just having a demographic, just having people who share the same values or ideals and who want to get together is not the same thing as building a vibrant community? What are let's just say the top 3 lessons that you have learned along the way as you have built 333 Collective over these last 3 years?
So I will say a number of things. Firstly, the platform that you and I use
Mm.
makes it a lot easier. Before, when I was building a platform, I was building it from scratch with a developer. So you talk about painful. A year and a half of envisioning, building the frame, blah, blah, blah. The platform.
Mighty Networks is great, and
Okay, good. I didn't know if you
shout
wanted.
out to Mighty Networks because we
Oh,
love Gina Bianchini, the founder. We love the platform. We love the direction it's going in. We'll put a link in comments for people to a link in show notes for people to check it out.
so starting there, Mighty Networks platform allows such creativity, but also a lot of support. But the 3 things that I would say that I find important is and in my case, what I decided for what my vision was, I call it a collective. It's not a community. A community, in my definition, is a group of women that align to behind a cause or an initiative that's shared. The collective is actually, it's part community, but it's really built to be a platform, much like a glorious garden, a walled garden, let's say, where women can come and share their visions, their inspiration, their expertise, and work with each other, collaborate with each other, connect with each other. So that energy of, I like to call it know, like, and trust each other, makes it so much different than a lot of the communities, the, Facebook communities. We can talk about algorithms and all of that, but the real reality is you've got to maintain the energy of know, like, and trust. You don't want to create a place where people are there to promote themselves only. They've got to be there to share and rise each other up.
Right. So no promotion. It's like, and people can create their own gardens. I noticed on 333. It's like if you have a passion, whether it's movies and film or books, or you're a writer, the members themselves of the collective can create their own little interest groups or areas.
Absolutely.
So that's
Absolutely.
interesting.
It is. We do have centralized initiatives. We have 2 monthly calls that are meetups and sharing circles. So we do have those, but people are able to open up their own garden plot. Let's
Mhm.
call it. We'll use that analogy, and they can plant, the seeds to what they love there. And I'll give you an example. I have everything from Gina Vild, who is an author. She writes for Psychology Today. She's just now publishing her book about resilience. hot topic for women at any age, but at this age in particular. So she has a resilience group. She'll pick a topic. Right now, she's planning a Zoom gathering soon on resilience. I have women that address health issues. I have women that are creative inspiration. We have a writing group that meets each month. We're just kicking off. Oh my gosh, I don't want to get into the weeds, but I'm really thrilled about this. There's a woman, Nancy Slonim Aroney, who is a memoirist, and she is going to be a host of a spotlight and kick off a weekly writing session for women who want to record their stories or write their stories. You might not be publishing a book, but you want to jot them down or write them down. So there are a number of opportunities for our members to shine and do their thing inside
So
of.
number one is, this isn't Diana's show. This is Diana elevating the members of the community to showcase their talents and to gather people around common values, ideas, goals.
Yeah, and it's interesting you say that too, because I love the idea. As an entrepreneur, probably one of the downsides is loneliness, right? So this collective I've seen turn into some magical collaborations. If they do have a business or they have a book, I just heard from a woman this morning that wants to do a collective book project with a number of the women. I have a number of podcast hosts who go, oh, I want to interview you. So we're not a huge organization, and I'm intentionally keeping it relatively small, but the power of it is the voices we can share. So I meet you in one of my monthly networking sessions. I'm going, oh my God, you're an entrepreneur. You got to go to Deb Belanger's. So we are promoting each other. I like to say we're cheerleaders in social media and in our own megaphones if we have them out in the world. So that kind of, circle of support
Yeah.
is exciting. We also have calls sometimes that because of what's going on in the world, I ask them a question around what they're grateful for that day because I know the vibe is low.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of emotional support for each other as well as supporting our businesses or our ideas.
So the first step in creating a community sounds like it's like, what is it that you want to create? What's the experience that you want to create for the members? Because there's different models, right? There's the guru model where, you're there because of the person who owns the community, and that's the primary interaction. There are models of community where it's all about collaboration and co-working and doing things together and creating those relationships and connections. And I think, one thing that we've learned is that communities only exist when the members create relationships with each other, and there's that level of support.
Mm-hmm.
So what is the number one lesson that you have learned from creating 333 in the mode that you've created it? Like, what surprised you about this journey of developing this community?
I will say that it's less a surprise and more of just a necessity to keep reminding me that we are all busy. The kinds of women that I attract, I like to define them as fiercely curious, excited about life. And if you think about it, they've got full lives.
Mm.
So I I maintain patience. I remember that this is not a social network where everybody's having to heart everybody's everything. I try to stay patient because I think that's an important component of not just building, but maintaining an engaged group is to explore opportunities. I'm learning every week things that work, things that
Mhm.
don't. And if things don't work, I don't do them anymore. And if they do work, I do more of them. So that's where I'm finding, I guess it's a tip, I guess, is to be nimble. And it's a tip also to be patient
Mm.
and to also acknowledge the life of the women that are the people that are in your community and not expect them to, check off all the boxes that you thought everybody would be thrilled to do. It's a slow transition for people. Like any new routine takes a while.
Takes a while. And, constant, reminder. We're learning every day too that, we can't rely on the daily digest emails of what's going on in the community. We have to encourage our members of why they should be on the platform, why they should engage with one another,
Yeah.
and having a good community manager. If that's not you, having someone on your team who is a really good community manager who has experience just galvanizing people and getting them to collaborate. And I've met some amazing people on 333, and I don't spend a lot of time there, but like Kelly Pratt and I have a new relationship. I'll interview her for the podcast because she's a community expert as well. And we tend to see each other in other rooms because we share interests, and
Yeah.
we'll be in someone else's community and there will be Kelly saying, "Hi, Deb." It's just like, I'm here. And so it's amazing. So before we go, I want to hear what's next for 333. I know you have some really big things planned. Share with us what the next chapter looks like.
So as I look forward in 2025, there's challenge, and this is probably one of the more challenging emotional times, both collectively in our country and beyond, but also individually as
Mhm.
we are entering 50s, 60s, and I have a couple of women in 70s that are very active. 333 will be evolving in a number of ways. First and foremost is I am working on relationships with women in certain regions who want to be ambassadors, for all lack of a better word, to cultivate more regional memberships so they can be more in-person gatherings.
Mhm.
Zoom is great. People love Zoom. I have a woman from Australia who joined and a woman from France. I love the fact that I can be talking to you and we don't live within driving distance easily. But in person is, I think, going to enrich the 333. Along with that, as I try to build these regional relationships, I'm going to go on the road and do two things. Number one, I'm going to host gatherings and just get a vibe of what's going on and hope new members will come on board. But I'm going to align that with my dream, which was the dream I had the very beginning of starting Third Act Quest. I am going to be collaborating with, I won't name her just since I haven't asked her permission, who's a filmmaker, and I'm going to interview third act women. I'm going to use my love of photography. I took a cinematography class. I have a vision for a video series that will be launching hopefully within 2026. So when I go to each region, I'll have a couple of interviews. I'll shoot my film and do my thing. So that's the example of a perfect alignment of my personal passion project, as you call it, and growing this business. And ultimately, I believe this series can inspire. I don't want it to go out there just to get people to join my membership. I believe that we all need to hear from women we can relate to. And we need to be inspired. I like to say our third act can be the best chapter in our life story. We need to believe it by hearing the stories of other women and how they went through the whatever set of disruptions and challenge to get there. So
I love that so much, Diana. And it's such a great note to close this interview with. Lastly, if people want to know more about 333 Collective and how to get involved and to join the community, where do they go?
My website is called thirdactquest.com. And at the very top in the navigation is the 333 Collective. And you can learn about it. There's information. But what I've done is offer a 2-month free experience. So you can jump in for 2 months. And just to give Mighty Networks another plug, if you join for 2 months, you will not automatically see this mysterious credit card bill. You are informed 2 or 3 times your trial is about to end. So that's really what I find exciting about it is 2 months to me is enough time to at least go to 1 or 2 Zooms and get a feeling for whether it's an important part of your life. And I encourage anyone listening, just come in and check it out. If it's
Come in and check it out and stay for a while. It takes time to also acclimate to a new community, to build it's into your calendar, into your day-to-day, into hopping in and commenting on someone's post or attending a virtual event. And I love that you're going in person. I think that people are craving in real life experiences, and it's that stickiness of creating that experience in person that keeps people coming back for more and enriches that online experience. So Diana, thank you for sharing your journey. Thank you for sharing the impetus for launching Third Act Quest and your inspiration for launching the company and the community. And we can't wait to follow your journey and see you on the inside.
wonderful, Deb. Thank you very much. It was great to chat today.
Thank you. That's it for now, my friends. Stay tuned for more community owners, community leaders, so you can learn how community can be a viable business model for your business as well. Take care.